In the heart of Central America lies a land of staggering biodiversity, where mountains kiss the clouds and rainforests pulse with life. This is Costa Rica, a small country that shelters more than 50 species of nature's most dazzling jewels, the hummingbirds. From the misty peaks of the cloud forest, to the steamy lowland rainforest, to the hot dry forest, each species plays a role in the amazing interaction between flower and bird, a relationship millions of years in the making. It's best to begin with the basics of hummingbird biology, but if there's interest in the particular biology of each species, go to the YouTube channel mentioned at the end. There, in the playlists, you will find species accounts of all 51 Costa Rican hummingbirds. Swifts shared a common ancestor with hummingbirds some 45 million years ago. Although the earliest known hummingbird fossil, some 30 million years ago, comes from Europe, today hummingbirds are only found in the Americas. Of the some 366 species that evolved in the New World, 51 species live in Costa Rica. But just for fun, let's look at some other notable species, like the smallest, the bee hummingbird from Cuba, and the largest, the giant hummingbird from the Andes. The swordbill hummingbird, also from the Andes, has the longest bill, and the frilled coquette from Brazil has the most festive look. The crimson topaz hails from Suriname and Guyana and is a good demonstration on hummingbirds' iridescence. The white-booted racket-tail male has quite a tail, but the female does not. Now, some hummingbirds don't have to be colorful to be outstanding, like the collared Inca. Guess where it's from? Now, Colombia has the most species, with about 160. As one goes further north and further south, there are fewer and fewer hummingbird species. In Alaska, there are just typically two, the rufous hummingbird and Anna's hummingbird. And in the extreme south, in Patagonia, there's just one, the green-backed firecrown. The firecrown migrates towards warmer climates during its winter to central Chile and central Argentina. The first peoples to inhabit the Americas were dazzled by hummingbirds too. This Nazca hummingbird took a lot of work to scratch into the desert. It's 93 meters long. Later on, early naturalists painted and studied them, like John James Audubon, but he got this one wrong. It's not a Costa Rican mangrove hummingbird, but a black-throated mango from South America. Hummingbirds are the only birds that can fly backwards. They hover using a unique wing motion that allows them to generate lift during both the downstroke and the upstroke, a flight style more like insects. The wings sweep back and forth in a horizontal figure-8 pattern rather than simply flapping up and down. This motion reverses airflow during the upstroke, allowing the bird to stay suspended mid-air. Their shoulder joint is a ball and socket, allowing the wing to rotate nearly 180 degrees. This enables near-symmetrical wing motion in both directions, unlike most birds. Most species beat their wings 50 to 80 times per second. This speed creates a continuous stream of lift to keep them in place without rising or falling. Their visual and muscular coordination allows them to hover at flowers with pinpoint accuracy. These frenetic little birds have an extreme metabolism with heart rates up to 1,200 beats per minute, while taking 250 breaths per minute too. They have the fastest metabolic rate and burn calories faster than any other non-insect animal. Their relatively large brain helps them remember the location of specific flowers, that is, the good ones. Hummingbirds have exceptional vision. They have 4 types of cone cells: red, green, blue, and ultraviolet, which means they can see colors humans can't. Many flowers have ultraviolet nectar guides. These guides help hummingbirds and insects find the center of the flower, where the nectar is. Their eyes process images at a very high frame rate, which allows them to see fast-moving objects. They also have excellent depth perception, which helps them navigate through dense foliage. Hummingbird iridescence is one of the most amazing features in nature. Iridescence is where color changes with the angle of light. The vibrant colors are not caused by pigments, but instead come from microscopic platelets made up of keratin and air stacked in layers in the feather's surface. Light hits the feathers and reflects off multiple layers within the cells. As the hummingbirds move, the light hits the platelets at a different angle, shifting the visible color, often from green to gold, blue, or red. Iridescence is used to attract females or help in defense. Penguins are excellent swimmers, but awkward at walking. Loons and grebes are great swimmers too, but their legs are positioned so far back on their bodies that they just flop and crash on land. Kingfishers have fused outer toes, which make walking almost impossible. And swifts are another group that can't really walk, but look at them fly. Hummingbirds have some fancy feet, but they're not for walking. But they're perfect for perching and occasionally itching. Previously, it was thought that hummingbirds didn't have a sense of smell, but recent studies show that they use their sense of smell to make foraging decisions and to avoid potential dangers, like from nasty insects. Hummingbirds must maintain healthy feathers for flight efficiency and proper thermoregulation. They stay clean by preening and taking baths and showers. They use their long, slender bills to carefully groom each feather. By nibbling along each feather shaft, bad oil, dirt, and ectoparasites are removed. Oil from a gland at the base of the tail provides weatherproofing and helps condition the feathers. The only ectoparasites of major concern are feather lice. There's nothing like a tropical downpour to wash your worries away, as well as all that dirt and grime. Dust baths are not a spa option in the rainforest, but a good dunk does wonders for body and soul. lacking a pool, hummingbirds can sponge bathe by rubbing against wet leaves. When people look terrible, they don't have the excuse, "Well, I'm molting." But hummingbirds do. Most hummingbirds do a complete body molt shortly after the breeding season. Out with the old feathers and in with the new. Meanwhile, you may not have much of a tail, but just look how great you look after the molt. Hummingbirds require a diet rich in both sugar and protein for energy and growth. Their main food sources are nectar, which provides them with carbohydrates and hydration, and insects, which are essential for protein, fats, and other nutrients. They also consume small amounts of pollen and sap. Nectar can be up to 90% of a hummingbird's diet, and it is composed of about 20% sugar on the average. Hummingbirds can taste sweet because evolution has rewired the receptor that normally is used to detect amino acids in meat to detect sugar. Their taste system is specialized for their unique nectar-based diet. They can detect as little as a 1 to 2% change in sugar concentrations, which helps locate high-quality flowers. But they can't taste artificial sweeteners. A hummingbird may feed 50 to 100 times per day. With that extreme metabolic rate, they may have to feed on hundreds of flowers daily, and in some cases, as many as 2,000 flowers. A hummingbird typically drinks between half to all of its body weight in nectar each day. For them, there's no such thing as drinking in moderation. Feeders are generally not bad for hummingbirds when used properly. Technically, hummingbird feeders are illegal in Costa Rica since 2019. However, on private property, enforcement is lax. There is interest by the tourism industry to review this policy and set up rules and regulations that would prevent harm to the hummingbirds and yet let tourists appreciate Costa Rica's great diversity. Hummingbirds rarely feed on fruit directly, but they do sometimes consume the juice from soft or broken fruit, especially when nectar is scarce. That goes for tree sap, too. Hummingbirds need protein, fats, and nutrients that nectar doesn't have. Insects and arthropods provide 10 to 80% of their diet by volume or energy. On the average, 20 to 30% of their food, especially during molting and breeding, comes from insects and spiders. Here, a hummer is hawking tiny flies, but they also like aphids, gnats, and mosquitoes. This bronzy hermit is gleaning, that is, picking off insects and spiders from leaves. They also hover around swarms and massacre whole bunches. Adult hummingbirds need to eat several dozen insects daily. This gives you an idea how their diet shifts depending on age and on breeding status and molt. In some deserts of Mexico, where flowering is dependent on unpredictable rains, hummingbirds can't depend on a constant nectar source. In one study, hummingbirds fed almost entirely on insects. Spiders are soft, spineless protein packages that are a large portion of many hummingbirds' diets. Spiders are snatched right from their web, particularly baby spiders. Hummingbirds seem to prefer very small spiders, and more are eaten during breeding season. Hummingbirds have such a high metabolic rate. One might ask how they get through the cold nights in a cloud forest. The answer is torpor. Hummingbirds drop their heart rate from 500 beats per minute to fewer than 50, and breathing may even stop. And their body temperature drops almost 50 degrees. You can see the thermal image becomes less colorful as the bird cools down. With that slow heart rate and cool body temperatures, their metabolic rate drops. While in this state of torpor, they consume 50 times less energy than when flying around. They come out of torpor hours or minutes before sunrise. When you gotta go into torpor, you've gotta go. It can be a long, cold night, or a warm one, so hummingbirds can go into a deep or a shallow torpor. So, depending on the ambient temperatures, they can adjust their metabolic rate and energy demands. They can go into torpor for a few hours or all night. Just perched in one place could make them easy prey from animals such as the spectral bat. Although it may take days or weeks for a male to court a willing female, mating takes only a few seconds. Costa Rican hummingbirds exhibit a variety of mating systems shaped by their ecological niches, feeding strategies, and evolutionary history. Many species in Costa Rica form leks, a mating system in which the males gather in a specific area to display their attributes by singing, making aerial dives, and flashing iridescent plumage. Females will visit the lek, check out the action, and eventually choose the most impressive one to mate with. Lekking is most common with the hermits, but other species have smaller, less sophisticated leks too. The Hermit's Got Talent show is not impressive to the human spectator. Another mating system could be called the trapline polygamy tactic. In a few species, like the striped-throated hermit, the male follows a fixed foraging route or trapline and sings along the way to advertise to females. They will sing from regular perches along the route. It sounds quite romantic, really. Others put on an aerial show, like the lesser violet ear, that flies up to 30 meters straight up, then plunges in a steep U or J-shaped dive over the female. Fiery-throated hummingbirds also perform diving and looping flights to draw the attention of females. And then they get close to the female and flare out their iridescent throat feathers. That usually clinches the deal. The Talamanca hummingbird uses the resource defense polygamy mating tactic. This is where a male defends patches of flowers and aggressively defends them, but he allows access to the flowers to females in exchange for mating opportunities. Sort of an ecological quid pro quo. Every species has a slightly different way of mating, but it usually involves a lot of singing, which sounds more like squeaking to people, and males showing off one way or another. Hummingbird nests generally look like this, a tidy little cup on a twig. Now there are some interesting exceptions. High in the Andes, the hill stars, like this Ecuadorian hill star, make nests in caves and rock crevices. The Andean hill star glues its nest to the wall of a cave or a crevice, making it out of hair from llamas, alpacas, and vicuñas. Just another example of the interconnections in nature. The vast majority of hummingbird nests use this secret ingredient, spider silk, which is one of the strongest known natural materials. It's stronger than steel by weight. Female hummingbirds gather up cobwebs and construct a small cup on a twig using the silk to lash down all kinds of plant material. Soft material, like plant down, is used for the inside. It takes about 6 to 10 days to build this little nest. When you consider that spiders are a big part of many hummingbirds' diets, and they use their silk, spiders are very important to hummingbirds. Other important materials for nest making are moss, liverworts, and scales of tree ferns. Both in temperate habitats and tropical ones, lichens are carefully applied as a final touch, not as a decoration, but for good camouflage. Hummingbirds lay 1 to 3 eggs, typically 2 eggs, which really aren't that small compared to the bird's size. The female incubates them for 14 to 19 days. The young are fed regularly, every 25 to 30 minutes. Mom regurgitates a smoothie of nectar and insects and then force feeds the chicks. There is no spillage with this technique. Chicks stay in the nest for 18 to 28 days, depending on the weather and nectar availability. This scintillant hummingbird is one of the smallest. The elegant high-class purple-crowned fairy only uses the finest nest material and builds a unique nest. The mangrove hummingbird makes its nest on the branch of a red mangrove overhanging the water. These 2 baby rufous-tailed hummingbirds will soon be too big for their nest. The green-crowned brilliant of the cloud forest has a nest that looks like a clump of moss, and a white-necked Jacobin makes a felted cup of lightly colored plant down on the upper surface of an understory palm that has another leaf above it as an umbrella. And a blue-chested hummingbird goes for the disheveled look. There's not much room left. Then it's time to fledge, and you can just imagine how hyperactive young hummingbirds must be. Now the hermits in the tropics build very different nests. This bronzy hermit is weaving a silk thread around a palm leaf and attaching plant material to the drooping leaf. Eventually, a comfy hanging nest is firmly attached to the palm or heliconia. All the hermits build these hanging nests. Here, a long-billed hermit incubates her eggs. She doesn't look very comfortable, but she has a good lookout for predators, and the leaves above her protect the nest from rain and prying eyes. These hanging nests are made in the understory. This green hermit is trying to wrap the first strands of a cobweb, but is having a hard time. After a lot of work, the nest is done. Nectar is gathered from nearby flowers, and spiders are snatched to make a protein shake for the babies. Notably, the hermits don't land on the nest to feed the babies, but rather hover in front. There are many predators in the tropics, and most bird nests don't survive. This one was attacked and the babies eaten. Such is life, but life continues, and here a white-tipped sicklebill feeds her young. Maybe they will survive. Nesting season in Costa Rica varies with the species, but is typically from March or April to about October and November. In the Costa Rican lowlands, hummingbirds nest mainly in the dry season, from December to June, when nectar-rich hummingbird flowers are most abundant. In the highlands, like in cloud forest, most nesting is at the end of the year, there again, when the nectar is best. Hummingbird feeding behavior is shaped by bill morphology, energy demands, and competition. In general, there are several categories of feeding strategies. There are territorialists, there are high-reward trapliners, and there are low-reward trapliners. Traplining is where an animal visits a sequence of food sources in a regular, repeatable route. Also, there are marauders, there are filchers, and there are piercers. The bird's bill shape and coevolution with plants affects its feeding strategy. Like this white-tipped sicklebill, which only visits heliconia flowers that match the shape of its bill. The sicklebill is considered a high-reward trapliner, as are many of the hermits, like this bronzy hermit of the hot lowland rainforests, where it feeds on scattered heliconia clumps. High reward means mucho nectar in the flowers, and low reward, not so much. The more common long-billed hermit even traplines nectar-rich exotic flowers, like this red ginger, and the band-tailed barbthroat is another trapliner. The green hermit is the main trapliner in cloud forests, and it visits scattered flowers on a long route and then repeats the route several times a day. The Talamanca hummingbird replaces the hermits above 2,000 meters as the high-reward trapliner. The female, with her longer bill, does more traplining than the male. Then there are the low-reward trapliners, which are small hummingbirds with short bills. Scattered flowers, with too little nectar to defend, are used by these species, including the white-tailed emerald and also female coppery-headed emeralds. The male purple-throated mountain gem defends territories fiercely, but the female is a low-reward trapliner. And so is this female white-bellied mountain gem. It should be noted that the striped-throated hermit, formerly the little hermit, is so small that it qualifies too. The very large lesser violet ear doesn't defend territories with its big size, but prefers to trapline low-resource flowers. Despite a variety of feeding strategies, most species of hummingbirds will defend a territory if it can, even for a short time. One of the reasons for the male's bright colors is that it helps in defense. It's hard to miss the Swiss guards at the gate. Females are attracted to bright colors as part of sexual selection, too. In species where the female defends territories, she has bright colors as well, like this fiery-throated hummingbird. In the cinnamon hummingbird, both the male and the female look alike, and they both set up territories. The most common and obvious territorial hummingbird in Costa Rica is the rufous-tailed hummingbird, known affectionately by other species as Señor Cabrón. It's very aggressive. The most aggressive territorialists tend to be medium-sized hummingbirds. Their territories usually have flowers with short corollas. A good territory attracts the best females looking to mate. Even this small snowcap will set up a territory, but as soon as a larger hermit comes along, it's out of there. Hasta luego. Marauders are hefty hummingbirds, larger than territorialists, that barge into a territory and drink to their fill, while the owner of the territory watches helplessly. Marauders include green-breasted mangoes and white-necked Jacobins, but also brown violet ears. Filchers are small hummingbirds that sneak into territories of larger birds and steal nectar, hopefully when the owner isn't looking. Although they get chased off, they return again and again. This strategy requires quick moves and a good exit plan. Low-reward trapliners double as filchers, and they include birds like the scintillate hummingbird, garden and canavit's emeralds, and the magenta-throated woodstar. The magenta-throated woodstar boldly sneaks into territories, pretending to be a bumblebee, even sounding like one, and hopes it gets a few sips of nectar before the owner discovers the ruse. This black-crested coquette uses the technique of poaching flowers when it's raining. The most advanced hummingbird that pierces flowers is the purple-crowned fairy. Its bill is the perfect tool to slice a hole at the base of a flower. Here a hermit hummingbird makes a hole with its bill. Another professional piercer is the striped-tailed hummingbird. The striped tail also feeds correctly, so it is both a pollinator and a nectar thief. This Costa will need the service of a true pollinator. Many times, hummingbirds are stealing nectar from holes made by bees. While it may seem difficult to find small flowers in such a diverse habitat, hummingbirds have great memories. Nectar is a superfood. Just 1 teaspoon has 16 calories, and in wild nature, that's a lot. So just who is competing with hummingbirds for this precious resource? This banana quit is a competitor, and so is this flower piercer. Competition in the tropics is great. Some plants are adapted for pollination by hawk moths at night, and many get pollinated by the some 18 species of nectar-feeding bats that live in Costa Rica. Generally, bats don't compete much with hummingbirds because they are feeding at different times. This is what we call temporal partitioning. Nectar bats sometimes don't drink all the nectar, so hummingbirds will get there early and drink up all the leftovers. The bat does the pollination, and the hummingbird is the freeloader. Some nature-loving people notice that their hummingbird feeders are empty before sunrise. Well, let's just say bats are smart and adapt to new food sources. Now, during the day, there are many insect competitors for hummingbird nectar. Hundreds of species of butterflies are nectar feeders. And while one butterfly may not drink very much, the sum total is still considered a problem for most hummingbirds. This hummingbird moth mimics a wood star hummingbird so closely that it gives some protection from predators. It's tough to compete when your competitors have stingers. You gotta do what you gotta do to get the nectar. A rare kumbaya moment between competitors. Now, there are some individual hummingbirds that are downright aggressive towards their insect competitors. Competition for nectar can be subtle, though. Flower mites are tiny arachnids that live inside flowers and drink nectar. They are small, but there are hundreds of them, so they do compete for nectar just a little bit. To add insult to injury, they colonize new flowers and get more nectar by jumping on and off the hummingbird's bill as it comes to feed. Thanks for the ride. The biggest competition comes from fellow hummingbirds. Hummingbirds spend 10 to 25% of their workday fighting, chasing, and guarding flowers. Everybody is driven away from nectar-filled flowers except for females in certain cases. Despite hummingbirds' quick flight, ability to fly backwards, and incredibly fast reactions, they do get eaten by predators, such as this tiny hawk and the more well-known kestrel. The bat falcon is obviously accustomed to catching fast-flying prey, and it can grab a hummingbird in flight or ambush it while perched. After a successful mid-flight catch at high speed, it can leisurely eat the hummingbird while perched. The bill is not eaten. That's a rare orange-breasted falcon on the lookout. A more common threat is a ferruginous pygmy owl that hunts in the late afternoon. Other animals that you might not think as hummingbird predators are large motmots and toads that somehow eat an occasional hummingbird. Basilisk lizards sometimes grab a hummingbird too. When it comes to nest predators, the list is long, including variegated squirrels who will eat eggs and nestlings. Capuchins are omnivores and will scrounge up anything that has protein, including hummingbird eggs and nestlings, as will coatimundis. Less than 20% of bird nests survive. That's why many have 2 or more nests in one season. Toucans love to eat eggs and are a big problem. A number of snakes eat hummingbird eggs and nestlings, like this striped palm viper. The neotropical bird snake is considered a specialist. Others, like this black forest racer, are more opportunistic. All birds are vulnerable at night as they rest and sleep. At this time, snakes, like this eyelash viper, are out looking for them. Luck is a very important part of life. It has been reported that praying mantids capture hummingbirds. This is a rare event, but that doesn't stop them from putting in the effort, waiting for the ultimate ambush. The size-weight difference here makes this almost impossible. The ambush didn't work out as planned. How hummingbirds don't crash as they fly through the forest at breakneck speeds defies logic. It's amazing how they dodge branches and trees, but very rarely they slam into the web of a golden orb weaver. This spider has a web of silk threads that are thin and strong. Sometimes the hummingbird gets hopelessly tangled and doesn't survive. In this case, the spider deftly cuts the web so that the unwanted hummingbird falls to the ground. Predation is probably not the reason for their short life expectancy of about 4 years in the wild. Since they can live 15 years in captivity, the cause of mortality points to death from starvation. Their high metabolic rate means they're living on a knife's edge. Hummingbirds are vital pollinators in Costa Rica. Their role is both ecologically important and highly specialized due to their unique adaptations and the coevolution with many plant species. Hummingbirds feed on nectar from flowers, and as they do this, foreheads, bills, and throats come into contact with the plant's reproductive organs, the anthers and the stigmas, thus transferring pollen between flowers. After pollination, flowers fall off and fruits begin to develop. Here is a remarkable example of coevolution between a bird and a plant. The bill of the green hermit fits perfectly into the centropogon flower. As it pushes its bill into the flower, its head hits a little trigger which causes pollen to explode onto the head. Then it flies to a female flower. As it drinks nectar, the pollen from the head is transferred to the stigma. Voila, pollination. These are classic hummingbird flowers. A long tubular corolla, red color, that produces nectar during the day of about 20% sugar. Flowers with shorter corollas, like this colorea, are visited by hummingbirds with shorter bills. Humilia, a common roadside shrub, is pollinated both by butterflies and by hummingbirds. And the same goes for lantana and verbenas. Gonzalagunia is a plant predominantly pollinated by insects, but hummingbirds provide a little extra pollination. Some trees, like this pachote, are pollinated at night, but hummingbirds and bees drink the leftover nectar in the daytime. It was once thought that nectar bats were the pollinators, but now it has been shown that hawk moths or sphinx moths are the principal pollinators. The point is that pollination can be a complex and messy ecological function. Over 60 plant families have species that rely on hummingbirds for pollination in Costa Rica. Flowers are visited and pollinated in the deep, dark understory and atop the sunny canopy. There are some 35 to 40 species of heliconias in Costa Rica, all of them pollinated by hummingbirds. The Psychotria, or hot lips plant, wastes no expense in advertising. At higher elevations, with colder weather, insect diversity and abundance is less, so they are not as effective nor reliable pollinators. Hummingbirds have filled this niche. A constant body temperature allows for pollinator service all day, not just when the sun is out. Many more plants depend on hummingbirds for pollination in cloud forest, like this orchid. The bonanza blank theory of plant pollination is that plants vary their nectar rewards to increase visitation and more pollination. By offering a mix of flowers, some with lots of nectar and others with none, plants encourage hummingbirds to visit more flowers, always hoping for a bingo. The plant gets more outcrossing and gets better fruit. Nectar sources for Costa Rica's hummers started to change about 500 years ago when the Spaniards started to bring exotic plants from all around the world. Some of these produce nectar. One good example would be bananas that provided food for the early settlers and nectar for hummingbirds. Today, there are some 982 introduced plant species in Costa Rica. Most of them are not used by hummingbirds, but here are a few. This Sanchesia is native to Ecuador and Peru. In the hot lowlands, beehive gingers are commonly planted. They are originally from maritime Southeast Asia, which means Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. Even more commonly planted is the red torch ginger. Notice this long-billed hermit has yet to regrow its tail feathers after molting. It looks like pollination is happening even though this ginger is not native, and in Asia it is pollinated by bees. Crepe gingers grow along roads in Costa Rica. It's native to Southeast Asia, to India, and northern Australia. The golden shrimp plant is from Peru, and the hummingbirds here seem to always steal the nectar. It doesn't need pollination, since people plant it all over the place. Here's a true Australian, the bottlebrush. It travels much of the subtropics and tropics. This large shrub, called the Brazilian redcloak, is actually native to Venezuela and Suriname. Many lowland hummingbird species feed upon it. There are many introduced heliconias in Costa Rica. This one is called the she-kong, and it's not as big as the King Kong heliconia. You have to love these common names. The Psittacorum heliconia is small and used along walkways. As early as 1502, Portuguese brought the first bananas to the New World from the Canary Islands. There are some 1,000 varieties of bananas, and several dozen of them can be found in Costa Rica, although only a few are used as export bananas. Bananas don't need to be pollinated, so all that nectar is given free of charge to the local wildlife. A more recent import is this ornamental pink banana that has become invasive in some places. This fuchsia can be found in the wild in the cold, temperate rainforests of southern Chile, so it has adapted to the highlands of Costa Rica. Two tiny volcano hummingbirds fight for its nectar. Of all the introduced plants to Costa Rica, about 47 are considered invasive and a threat to native species. All the white-necked Jacobins care about is its nectar. The majority of Costa Rican hummingbirds make short seasonal migrations in response to flower availability. Many move from the lowlands to the highlands and back. The Erythrina or Poro tree is a hummingbird magnet in coffee plantations, and Inga osterdeti, a legume tree on the Caribbean slope, brings in hummingbirds from all around. In the tropical dry forests of Costa Rica's northwest, many large trees flower in the dry season, and there is a notable increase in hummingbirds at this time, particularly around trees like tababuya. Many individual hummingbirds move around looking for new flowers, but these aren't migrations. Most species of hermits, like this green hermit and this striped-throated hermit, don't make seasonal movements. Nor does Costa Rica's most widespread hummingbird, the rufous-tailed. The ruby-throated hummingbird is Costa Rica's only long-distance migrant. This tiny bird that weighs only 3 grams flies 4,000 kilometers from Costa Rica to the eastern part of North America. After spending the winter throughout Costa Rica's many habitats, it flies north to the Yucatan Peninsula. There, some go to the left and follow the coast to get to Texas, while others hang out with the flamingos on Yucatan's north shore. Then they head north. This trip is nearly 1,000 kilometers over water. There is no fast food and not a single water fountain. Before the trip, they put on an extra 2 grams of weight. If the weather turns nasty, they just have to suck it up and keep going. It's not known how many perish on this long journey. By the time they get to the Gulf Coast, they are exhausted, skinny, and hungry. Fortunately, many of the natives offer them food, which they wholeheartedly accept. With regard to hummingbird conservation, 2 Caribbean species went extinct after the invasion of Europeans: Brace's emerald from the Bahamas and Gould's emerald from Jamaica. Their decline may be related to too many pirates, or at least the domestic animals they brought with them. The threats to hummingbirds are often bizarre. For example, bird feathers in hats became fashionable in Victorian times. That included tiny hummingbird feathers that sparkled like jewels. Skyscrapers with glass windows kill 1 billion birds a year in North America, including hummingbirds. Fortunately, Costa Rica doesn't really have many skyscrapers, but Costa Rica does have a lot of domestic cats. Predation by domestic cats is the principal direct human-caused threat to birds, including hummingbirds. Cats often hang out by hummingbird feeders. Teaching your cat to hunt hummingbirds is just plain evil. Studies show that the more well-fed the cat, the more birds it kills. Fortunately, Costa Rica has a great system of national parks and protected areas, and many of these are in highland habitats where hummingbird diversity is highest. There are also many protected areas that are in private hands and non-governmental organizations, such as the Children's Eternal Rainforest. However, there are always threats to the habitat. Trees are cut every day, and while the laws are good, vigilance is often lacking. And once a 500-year-old tree is on the ground, it's only helping termites and decomposers. The root of most threats are an ever-increasing human population. And now we have climate change to contend with. While computer modeling predicts that the intense hurricanes will move more northward, no one really knows. The increase in wildfires will certainly be a problem for Costa Rica. With climate change, there will be a change in the plant communities. Will flowers bloom at the same time as before? Will plants adapt to different temperatures and rainfall? Already, scientists have shown that changes in the way flowers bloom affects plant-pollinator interactions, and this could threaten the stability of communities. The only hummingbird in Costa Rica that is considered endangered is the endemic mangrove hummingbird. And that's because of the limited distribution of mangroves along the Pacific coast. Hummingbirds are one of the many keepers of the balance in one of the most diverse places on Earth. With every tree cut, every flower that doesn't bloom due to climate change, their world grows smaller. Despite these threats, Costa Rica's hummingbird species still have viable populations. Protecting them means protecting the rivers, forests, and skies that sustain us all. Costa Rica has shown the world that conservation is possible. Now it is up to us, each of us, to keep these skies alive.